recording has begun.
Hello, my name is JC Lester, and this is Desserts Through the Ages. Have you ever had a very fulfilling meal, and then you just feel a little empty afterwards? You just get that little sugary craving inside, and you're like, I want a dessert. And as you sit down, you're making your dessert, you wonder, where did it come from? Why do we have desserts? What is a dessert? A dessert is a sweet food that you eat after a meal. Desserts have a history, whether that be its beginning or how it progressed throughout Europe and into our homes today, but somehow it's blossomed into something sweet. My goal is to help people understand the history of desserts so that you can literally and figuratively enjoy the sweetness itself. I get the opportunity to work around sweets all the time. It's my job, and it was even a career choice I had an option of going into. And a part of that, I have to understand how these desserts were made and where they came from to really succeed in that workload. But another part in really understanding and really honing in on this history is that without it, would we really enjoy the sweetness behind these sugary treats? Would this actually be something we could enjoy throughout our lives? That craving may have never been fulfilled without it. Now, the first desserts were seen in ancient civilizations, but sweets progressed throughout the Middle Ages. It also evolved throughout many countries, but it was primarily focused throughout Europe. And these sweets then became a phenomenon, which then the desserts we know today. Did you know that the word dessert comes from the French word desavoir? For Huntsberg states that this French word means to clear the table, because they were first used as palate cleansers. Valerie in The Intention of Dessert states that ancient civilizations, people first enjoyed fruit or nuts rolled in honey. This was the first time that something like this was candy. But they also say in the Middle Ages that their sweets were mostly fruits and jams. One of the first desserts stated by Valerie and Huntsberger was that the Middle Ages was a custard, and then you had apple pie in 1381, and then gingerbread in the 1400s. Valerie also states that sugar was starting to be manufactured during the Middle Ages, so this is where you have this transition coming in where sweets kind of take over. As I show in this image right here, is nuts and a jar of honey. This is how a modern day transformation of what ancient civilizations would have done. Here's also a recipe from 1381 of that original apple pie. Now, even though we see desserts as sweet treats today, in Europe they started off just a tad bit differently. First, the sweet choice was fruits and jams, and then there were written recipes for these foods. But after that, Europeans started to combine sweet and savory things before really separating them into the two things that we see today. Now, this happened until the 17th century. Now, Huntsberger really states that the discovery of the New World and sugar plantations popping up made the price of sugar decrease. But along with that, it also allowed people in lower classes to have more access to sugar. But this made it so it wasn't as limited to higher classes. But with those sweet and savory combinations, we see from Drizal an example of this higher class from a 16th century Italian banquet where they combined goose liver macarons and eel marzipan. And this was their statement piece. But along with that, Testra also shows us that they also became refreshment in saloons after the price of sugar went down. Here's an example of what I'm talking about. So an example of goose liver, also known as foie gras, is seen in macarons, and this is an example of sugar cane. Originally what it is before it's granulated down to what we see today. We also see desserts become a normal occurrence for our modern day lives. With the availability of new technology, creativity, and less expenses, the modern desserts were created. We see now that in the 18th and 19th century, from the invention of dessert, that this century's technology made it more possible to have these sweets, including sugar. Especially the invention of the refrigerator. This made it so much easier to be able to hold butter together, and that way it also made pastries much simpler. Huntsberger also shows us that the Industrial Revolution also had a part to play here. The mass production of foods like cakes was also an example of this. As you can see here, I've shown you a picture of an old cookbook for sweets in the 1900s. These are some of the different types of cakes that were used and probably made around the household at the time. Here's an example of a woman next to probably an older refrigerator, maybe one of the originals, or just a kind of a reformation of it. We also have a historical photo of a bakery at the time. But also an important part of this is formation of butter inside pastries. I want to explain to you that butter had to be put out in sheets, placed in pastry dough, and then folded together to actually get that flakiness that you find in pastries nowadays, like croissants. Now, in conclusion, the history of desserts has become and transformed into today's modern take of the sugary snack, including its progress throughout the old world. Even though desserts have evolved and changed throughout history, it is the cultural phenomenon that makes the sweet so delightful for us to have and for us to really take care of. The whole point of me teaching you these desserts is so that you should be able to have the basic knowledge to go forth and to be able to eat these sweets today, knowing why you're eating them, where they came from, and to really enjoy the sweetness of it and its delightfulness. Thank you.